when Ethan, a quiet 5-year-old boy from Seattle, whispers to his mother the exact coordinates of a secret NASA base on the far side of the moon, Michael and Claire Henderson realize their child remembers something no human should, because he once was someone who never returned from space. Seattle, 2025. The city was a mosaic of silver rain and neon reflections, where the sky always seemed to be weeping softly over the restless pulse of civilization. In the quiet suburb of Green Lake, Michael and Claire Henderson lived a life that could have been mistaken for peace. Both were teachers, he of history, she of literature, and their world revolved around small things: the smell of coffee in the morning, the rhythm of chalk on blackboard, and the laughter of their only son, Ethan. Ethan was 5, quiet, curious, with a gaze that often lingered too long on the night sky. He had the habit of pressing his palms against the cold glass of his bedroom window, watching the clouds drift past the moon as if they were thoughts passing through his mind. "The light changes," he once said to Claire, pointing at the full moon. "Sometimes she sleeps. Sometimes she dreams." At first, his parents found it poetic, a sign of imagination nurtured by bedtime stories and the books scattered through their house. But then, one gray Saturday morning, while Michael graded papers at the kitchen table, Ethan appeared with a stack of papers covered in strange drawings, circles, lines, grids, and something that looked like an enormous structure rising from the lunar dust. "What's that, buddy?" Michael asked, leaning closer. "It's Mother," Ethan said softly. "She's waiting under the south wall of the moon." Michael laughed. "The moon doesn't have walls, champ." Ethan frowned, almost offended. "Not anymore." That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Claire examined the drawings again. There were coordinates written in a childish scrawl, pairs of numbers, some crossed out, others underlined. She didn't recognize them, but the symmetry was uncanny. One of the shapes resembled a spacecraft, triangular, sleek, with luminous veins branching through its body. Claire showed them to Michael. "He couldn't have invented this," she whispered. "Look at the detail. He even labeled sections: oxygen modules, docking arms." Michael, the rational one, shrugged. "He's 5, Claire. He loves space documentaries. He probably saw something online." But the next morning, Ethan corrected his father while watching a NASA broadcast about the Apollo missions. "That's wrong," he said, pointing at the TV. "They never told people about Apollo 20. It wasn't canceled. We went there." Michael froze. "We?" Ethan nodded, his voice calm, distant. "I went there. My name was William." The air between them seemed to shift, a silent distortion, like gravity bending. Claire tried to smile. "William who?" "Rutledge," the boy said, without hesitation. "I died on the moon." A long silence followed. Outside, rain tapped against the windows like fingers trying to get in. Over the next days, the incidents multiplied. Ethan began describing places and details no one had ever told him. He spoke of metallic towers embedded in the lunar dust, of sleeping machines and a woman who wouldn't wake up. When Michael asked what the woman's name was, Ethan only whispered, "Leona." Claire searched the internet. The name William Rutledge led her into a labyrinth of conspiracy forums, stories of a secret Apollo 20 mission in the 1970s, of a lost astronaut, and of footage supposedly recovered from a crashed lunar module. Most of it sounded absurd, yet some of Ethan's words matched the posts exactly. The crater Delport Idsack, the alien structure, the presence of an unidentified female astronaut. One evening, while preparing dinner, Claire noticed Ethan sitting on the floor with her old laptop open. She hadn't even known he could navigate the internet. On the screen was a lunar map, and the cursor blinked over coordinates: 16.2 degrees, 119.3 degrees. "That's where the ship sleeps," he said, without looking up. "Mother dreams there." She unplugged the computer, heart racing. "Ethan, where did you learn this?" He just shrugged, as if the question were meaningless. "It's not learning if you already remember." That night, neither parent slept. Michael sat at his desk with a whiskey glass. retyping the coordinates into Google Earth's lunar mode. The location was real, a deep, unnamed crater on the moon's far side. There were no official images of its interior, only a shadow, a void. When he zoomed in, the program crashed. The next morning, Claire called a child psychologist. Ethan's case seemed too complex for simple imagination. Dr. Morales, a calm, analytical woman, listened carefully, then recommended observation. Children can internalize adult narratives, she explained. Even secret ones from media exposure. Sometimes it's a cry for attention. But Ethan's next act was beyond any psychology. During a lunar eclipse, as the family stood in the yard, he whispered, "She's moving." Seconds later, a tremor ran through the ground, faint but real. Later that night, a minor moonquake was recorded by observatories in Japan, the exact region, near the coordinates Ethan had drawn. By then, Michael's skepticism had begun to erode. He found himself watching his son as one might watch a stranger wearing a familiar face. There was a weight behind Ethan's eyes, something ancient, a flicker of memory that didn't belong to childhood. At school, teachers noticed it too. He solved spatial puzzles faster than any of his peers, yet seemed absent-minded during playtime, often staring at the ceiling, murmuring numbers to himself. One teacher overheard him reciting part of a launch checklist, terms like AGC alignment and SIVB separation. Claire cried that night. "He's slipping away from us," she said. "What if he's remembering something he shouldn't?" Michael tried to reassure her, but even as he spoke, his voice trembled. Deep inside, a terrifying possibility had taken root, that his son's mind was not his own, that the past had found a way to return, wearing the body of a child. One night, Michael entered Ethan's room to check on him. The moonlight fell across the bed, and the boy was whispering in his sleep. His words were soft, broken, like radio transmissions through static. Michael leaned closer and heard, "The dust is alive. We found her. We woke the mother." Then silence. Ethan's small chest rose and fell in peace. Michael stepped back, shaken to his core. He didn't know what to fear more, that his son was dreaming, or that he wasn't. The night that everything broke began like any other in the Henderson home. The rain drummed steadily on the rooftop, and the hum of the dishwasher filled the kitchen like white noise meant to soothe restless hearts. Claire was reading by the dim light of a bedside lamp when a sharp cry cut through the stillness. A child's voice, high and panicked. "Michael," she called, throwing the blanket aside. They burst into Ethan's room together. The little boy sat upright in bed, his eyes wide open but unfocused, his skin slick with sweat. His hands clawed at the bedsheet as if grasping for something that wasn't there. "Ethan, honey, wake up," Claire whispered, shaking him gently. But Ethan wasn't asleep. His eyes rolled upward, and his voice came out in a tone that was not his own, deeper, slower, carrying an accent that didn't belong to any 5-year-old. "We lost her. The hull's breached. Oxygen down! She's not breathing!" Michael froze. It was the voice of a man, mature, urgent, terrified. He grabbed the phone to record it, trembling so hard that the device almost slipped from his hands. "We left her behind, Leona. The ship. It's alive." And then silence. Ethan blinked, his body going limp, the adult voice dissolving into a child's whimper. "Mommy," he murmured, "I can't find my helmet." Claire held him close, her tears mingling with his sweat. "You're home, sweetheart. You're safe." But deep down, she knew safety had already left their world. The next morning, Michael showed the recording to Dr. Morales, who listened carefully, eyes narrowing as she played it again. "This could be a somniloquy, complex sleep talking," she said finally. "Children can mimic voices subconsciously." Michael shook his head. "That voice, it's not mimicry. You heard the accent? He used flight terms, things he couldn't possibly know." Morales hesitated. "Children absorb things from media more than we realize." But Claire leaned forward. "He said a name. Leona? That made the doctor pause. And you're sure you never mentioned that name to him? Never, Claire replied. Morales sighed, pressing her pen against her notepad. Then I suggest you document everything. Keep a diary. If this continues, we may need neurological tests. As they drove home, the silence between Michael and Claire was heavier than the rain clouds above Seattle. The windshield wipers kept time with the pounding of their hearts. At home, Ethan was playing quietly on the living room floor with a set of magnetic blocks, building what looked like a ship, long, curved, and oddly organic. When he saw his parents, he smiled faintly. Do you like it? It's the inside of Mother. The walls breathe when she sleeps. Michael crouched down. Buddy, who told you about Mother? Ethan looked up, puzzled. She did. That night, Claire couldn't eat. The smell of food made her nauseous. Michael tried to distract her, turning on the TV, but the universe seemed to mock them. A documentary about NASA was airing, the host discussing the early Apollo missions. Ethan, sitting cross-legged on the couch, interrupted. That's not the real footage. The host's voice continued. After Apollo 17, the lunar program was discontinued. No, it wasn't, Ethan said flatly. Apollo 20 went to the far side. We found her there. Claire turned off the TV. The click of the remote sounded like a gunshot in the silence. Later, after Ethan was asleep, Michael poured 2 glasses of whiskey. His hands shook as he spoke. Claire, I checked. William Rutledge was a real name. She stared at him, her face pale. What? He was listed as a test pilot and astronaut in the 1970s. There's no official record of him flying, but there are rumors. Apollo 20, 1976, a secret joint mission with the Soviets. Supposedly they found something on the moon. Claire's voice cracked. And you think that's what Ethan's remembering? I don't know what to think, he admitted. But his coordinates, his words, they line up with things no one outside NASA should know. That night, neither of them slept. Every creak of the house felt like the breath of an unseen watcher. The next morning brought no relief. While eating breakfast, Ethan suddenly began humming a low, rhythmic tune, a sequence of notes that felt strangely mathematical. What song is that, sweetheart? Claire asked. It's not a song, he replied. It's the pulse of the ship. When she wakes up, everyone will hear it. The boy's tone was so serene that Claire nearly dropped her coffee mug. That afternoon, a call came from Ethan's preschool. His teacher's voice was strained. Mrs. Henderson, could you come in? There's something unusual we'd like to discuss. When they arrived, Ethan was sitting apart from the other children, quietly drawing in a notebook. The teacher, Ms. Collins, held up the pages. They were filled with intricate symbols, loops, and strange geometric diagrams. We thought he was doodling, she said, but one of our parents is an engineer at Boeing. He says this looks like a propulsion system schematic, a very advanced one. Claire's knees weakened. Michael guided her to a chair. Ms. Collins hesitated. And there's something else. During nap time, he talked in his sleep. We thought he was pretending, but the words... She opened a voice note on her phone. Ethan's small voice filled the room, speaking fluently. Not English, but something that sounded like a blend of English and an older European accent, calm and deliberate. The lunar light is fading. We are entering the shadow of the Terminator line. Leona says she can feel the ship breathing again. I told her not to touch the blue veins. Claire covered her mouth to muffle a sob. The teacher looked at them, unsure whether to apologize or call someone else. That night, the Hendersons sat in the dim glow of the living room. The rain outside seemed endless, and the clock ticked too loudly. Michael broke the silence first. Maybe we should contact someone from NASA. Or a priest, Claire whispered. They exchanged a look, desperate, frightened, united by the unspoken realization that their lives had crossed into something vast and unfathomable. Later, as Claire tucked Ethan into bed, he reached out and touched her cheek. Don't be afraid, he said softly. It's not bad to remember. Sometimes the universe just forgets too soon. Claire felt tears rising, her throat closing. "What do you mean, my love?" Ethan's eyes shimmered with a depth that no 5-year-old should possess. "We didn't die. We just came back different." The lamp flickered. Somewhere far above the clouds, the moon shone faintly, cold, distant, waiting, and for the first time, Claire wished she couldn't see it. Rain was falling again, soft, ceaseless, and heavy with that particular Seattle melancholy that blurred streetlights into halos. Days had passed since Ethan's last nocturnal revelation, but the silence that followed was not peace. It was pressure, a quiet before a storm. Michael Henderson had begun keeping a notebook filled with dates, times, phrases, and coordinates that Ethan had uttered. He would wake in the middle of the night, replay the recording of his son's deep, foreign voice, and feel the same icy tremor in his chest every time he heard the words, "Leona, we left her behind." Claire noticed the toll it was taking. Her husband, once calm and rational, had grown pale and restless. He had stopped shaving, his eyes haunted by sleeplessness, but she too was unraveling. Sometimes, she would wake to find Ethan sitting upright in bed, staring at the ceiling, whispering numbers, long sequences of decimals that made no sense. They didn't know those numbers had a meaning yet. It started on a Thursday morning. Michael was at the University of Washington, waiting for an old friend, Dr. Alan Brooks, astrophysicist and lecturer, one of the few people Michael trusted enough to confide in. Alan was in his mid-40s, lean and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who spoke in measured tones and listened in long silences. When Michael showed him the notebook, Alan leafed through it without a word, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. "These aren't random," Alan murmured finally. "Some of these are lunar coordinates." Michael frowned. "You're sure?" Alan typed a few of the numbers into his tablet. The screen displayed a digital model of the moon. "Yes, these are from the far side, here, near the Delport Izsack region. No human missions have ever been there." Michael swallowed hard. "But someone has Alan. Someone named William Rutledge." Alan looked up sharply. "Where did you hear that name?" "My son told me." Silence fell again, heavier this time. Alan leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "You're telling me a 5-year-old boy gave you coordinates that correspond to a restricted area of the lunar surface? I'm telling you, he gave me details no one could know. He describes metallic structures under the dust, something he calls mother." For the first time, the scientist's calm faltered. "Michael, that's—" He hesitated, lowering his voice. "That's part of an old NASA legend. They said Apollo 20 was a joint US-Soviet mission to investigate an artificial structure. Officially, it never happened. But he opened a secure file on his laptop, a grainy satellite image of a long, dark object embedded in the lunar soil. Unofficially, there were anomalies, data gaps, classified telemetry. This image leaked in 2007, then disappeared. I've never seen coordinates that precise until now." Michael stared at the image, the shadow of something immense, shaped like a ship, half buried in dust. Could Ethan have seen this online? Alan shook his head. "No, it was scrubbed years ago. Only researchers like me had archived copies." A chill ran through the room. That evening, Michael returned home with Alan in tow. Claire was wary at first, her hands trembling as she poured coffee, but when Ethan came downstairs, Alan knelt beside him gently. "Hey, Ethan, I hear you like space." The boy looked up, expression distant, yet peaceful. "I don't like it," he said. "It's home." Alan smiled uneasily. "Do you remember being there?" Ethan nodded. "We went past the line of light. The dust sparkled like glass. She was waiting, under the southern wall." Alan's pulse quickened. "The southern wall of what?" "The city," Ethan whispered. "The one that hums when you touch it." For a moment, no one breathed. Claire felt tears rise, though she didn't know why. Alan asked softly, "Ethan, who is she?" "The mother," he said simply. "She's not a ship. She's alive, but she sleeps." Alan's voice trembled. "And who are you?" Ethan looked at him, eyes glowing with an impossible clarity. "You already know." The room went silent. The rain outside intensified, beating the windows like the pulse of something vast and unseen. Later, when Ethan had gone to bed, Alan turned to the Hendersons, his face pale. "I can't explain this," he said, "but I'll tell you this much. Those coordinates point to metallic readings recorded by lunar radar back in the 70s. NASA buried the data. The mass they found was enormous. Unlike any known natural formation," Claire whispered. "So it's real?" Alan hesitated. "It's something, and your son knew about it before I told you." The following days became a blur of secrecy and obsession. Alan and Michael spent hours cross-referencing Ethan's coordinates with archived lunar telemetry. The matches were too exact to dismiss. Claire tried to keep life normal, bedtime stories, breakfast routines, laughter when she could summon it, but Ethan was changing. He no longer played with other children. He spoke less, slept less, and sometimes drew symbols in chalk on his bedroom wall, spirals and geometric grids that Alan later recognized as energy field patterns. One night, while analyzing one of Ethan's drawings, Alan's software detected something astonishing. The patterns contained mathematical ratios consistent with quantum harmonic resonance models, a theoretical concept decades beyond human engineering. Alan sat back in shock. "Michael," he said slowly, "your son is describing a kind of energy matrix. Zero-point extraction. It's the holy grail of physics. Infinite, clean power drawn from the quantum vacuum itself." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. "And he says it comes from Mother?" Alan nodded. "If he's right, that ship, whatever it is, could power civilizations." At that moment, the lights in the house flickered. For a brief instant, every electronic device, the lamp, the television, the radio, emitted a low hum, synchronized, resonant, like a breath through the walls. Ethan's voice came from the staircase. "She's listening," he said. They turned. He stood in his pajamas, the moonlight outlining his small silhouette. "Mother knows you're looking for her. She's waking up." No one spoke. The only sound was the quiet rhythm of the rain. When Alan left that night, he took with him copies of Ethan's drawings and the coordinates. But as he stepped into his car, a dark SUV at the corner of the street flicked its headlights on, then off. Watching, inside, Claire held Ethan in her arms. His heartbeat was slow, steady, almost mechanical, as if pulsing in tune with something far beyond the earth. And Michael, standing by the window, finally whispered the words neither of them wanted to say aloud. "What if he's not remembering? What if he's reconnecting?" The city lights shimmered below, mirrored in the wet streets, and above them, the moon glowed faintly blue, as though answering back. The city of Seattle seemed to breathe in fog that week, a soft, haunting mist that blurred the world's edges, as if reality itself were losing focus. The Hendersons' house no longer felt like home. It was a containment chamber of whispers and half-remembered voices. The notebooks filled with coordinates, the drawings of alien structures, the sound recordings of Ethan's nocturnal transmissions. All of it had transformed their lives into something fragile, electric, and utterly unrecognizable. Dr. Alan Brooks had set up a temporary workstation in their basement, his equipment humming softly under flickering lights. Oscilloscopes, spectral analyzers, old NASA telemetry software, a patchwork of science and desperation. Michael helped where he could, though his academic training was in history, not astrophysics. Claire spent her nights watching Ethan, as if afraid he might dissolve into starlight while she blinked. "His brainwaves spike when he sleeps," Alan said one night, eyes fixed on a monitor. "These aren't normal sleep cycles. It's like he's transmitting." Michael frowned. "Transmitting to who?" Alan didn't answer. Instead, he opened another window on his laptop, overlaying Ethan's sleep patterns with lunar telemetry data from the old Apollo archives. The curves aligned with eerie precision to something. he whispered. Or someone who's listening. Claire shivered. Are you saying the ship? Alan hesitated. I don't know, but every time Ethan mentions Mother, there's a spike. Electromagnetic fluctuations, just above the Schumann resonance. It's measurable. The silence that followed was heavy with awe and dread. It was Alan who suggested they reach out to Helen Carter. Once a senior data analyst for NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Division, she had resigned a decade earlier under mysterious circumstances. According to Alan, she'd tried to expose anomalous data suppression in the agency's archives. Her name, whispered among astrophysicists and conspiracy theorists alike, carried equal parts respect and fear. They found her living in a secluded cabin on the Olympic Peninsula, a place surrounded by cedar trees and silence. When Alan called, she hung up the first time. On the second attempt, he said one word that changed everything: Apollo 20. There was a long pause. Then a quiet voice answered, You'd better come alone. 2 days later, Alan and Michael drove west through the mountains, their car headlights slicing through rain and fog. Claire stayed behind with Ethan, though her heart ached with unease. Her son had stopped drawing ships and started writing instead, pages filled with looping symbols that no one could decipher. When she asked him what they meant, he simply said, It's how she talks when she dreams. At the cabin, Helen Carter opened the door before they could knock. She was in her 50s, with sharp gray eyes and the composure of someone who had carried secrets too long. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled as she gestured for them to enter. I know why you're here, she said without preamble, and I wish you hadn't come. Michael exchanged a glance with Alan. You know about the Apollo 20 mission? Helen gave a bitter laugh. I lived it. I was on the data analysis team in 1976, though officially, the mission didn't exist. They told us we were processing deep space telemetry from a communication satellite. But when the raw footage came in, I knew it wasn't that. It was lunar descent data, and something else. She led them to her living room, where a single hard drive sat on a table like an altar. I've kept this hidden for years. What you're about to see, you can't unsee. She powered up an old monitor. The video was grainy, monochrome, but unmistakably authentic. The inside of a spacecraft. Voices echoed through static. A male voice, American. A female voice, with a faint European accent. Then, through the distortion, a third sound. A rhythmic vibration, like a heartbeat made of metal. Approaching the structure. Visual contact confirmed. The camera panned over a vast, alien surface, black, ridged, alive with faint blue light. It's not rock, it's organic. Then the footage cut to a close-up. The interior of the craft, walls that pulsed faintly like the veins of a sleeping creature. And there, slumped in a pilot's chair, was a figure, a humanoid shape, ancient and perfectly preserved. Leona's readings dropping. She touched the blue. The transmission ended abruptly in static. Michael's hands shook. My son described this. Every detail. The light, the woman, even the heartbeat. Helen's gaze hardened. Then you understand why I left NASA. They buried this. Every copy was destroyed. Every witness silenced or reassigned. They claimed the footage was a hoax. But I kept the original telemetry. The ship's coordinates, its energy readings. They called it the Mother, and they said it was dormant. Alan leaned forward. Dormant? Yes, she said quietly, until something reactivated it. Michael swallowed. You think that's Ethan? Helen didn't answer right away. She studied him, then said, When was he born? June 9th, 2020. Helen's expression darkened. That's exactly 44 years to the day after the Apollo 20 mission launched. The same lunar alignment, the same solar arc. The silence was suffocating. Whatever happened up there, she continued, it wasn't an accident. Something, or someone, wanted that connection preserved. The ship's energy field was biological, resonant. If it marked Rutledge, maybe it imprinted his consciousness. Michael felt a chill run through him. Reincarnation? Helen exhaled slowly. or transmission. The mother might not just store energy, she might store minds. That night, back in Seattle, Claire was jolted awake by Ethan's voice. He was standing by the window, looking up at the moon, his small hand pressed to the glass. "Mom," he said softly. "They're calling." "Who's calling, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The others," he replied. "The ones that didn't sleep." Lightning flashed, illuminating his reflection in the glass. And for a moment, Claire swore she saw another face superimposed on his, older, male, eyes filled with a cold, astronaut sorrow. The storm outside intensified. Far away, in her cabin, Helen Carter received a text message from an unknown number. It contained only one sentence: "You should not have shown them the footage." Moments later, her power went out. Seattle slept uneasily that night. The air felt charged, like static before a lightning strike, as if the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. In the Hendersons' home, every clock ticked a little slower, every shadow seemed longer. Claire barely slept. Michael didn't at all. And Ethan dreamed. His small body twitched under the blankets as whispers escaped his lips. Fragments of a life not his own. In the corner of the room, the moonlight pulsed through the curtains like a living thing. By morning, the storm had cleared, but not the heaviness. The family gathered in silence over breakfast, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the void between them. Then, without warning, Ethan dropped his spoon. His head tilted slightly to the side, as if listening to something distant. "She's awake again," he murmured. Claire froze. "Who's awake, sweetheart?" "The mother," he said, his voice low. "She remembers me now." Michael reached for his hand, but Ethan pulled away, eyes still distant. "She wants to show you," he added, almost gently. Later that afternoon, Alan arrived, his face pale. "Helen's gone dark," he said. "I've been trying to reach her all night. No response. Her line is dead. And her GPS stopped transmitting around 3 a.m. Michael's stomach sank. "You think they found her?" Alan hesitated. "If by they you mean the NSA or whoever's been suppressing Apollo 20, then yes, they know we're onto something." He placed a folder on the kitchen table. Inside were stills from Helen's footage and a printed scan of a female astronaut's face, labeled Leona Snyder, 1938-1976. Claire covered her mouth. "That's the name Ethan keeps saying." Alan nodded grimly. "Leona Snyder disappeared during the same mission. NASA's records claim she died in a ground test, but she was on that ship." Michael stared at the photo. The woman's expression was serene, her eyes open and distant, like someone staring into eternity. Ethan walked into the room then, barefoot, his pajamas rumpled. He saw the photo and stopped dead. His lips trembled. "That's her," he said quietly. "Leona. She tried to wake the mother before it was time." The three adults exchanged horrified glances. "Ethan," Alan said softly, "how do you know that?" The boy blinked, as though the question were strange. "Because I was there." Claire reached for him, her heart racing. "Baby, you're here with us now. You're safe." He turned toward her, and for a heartbeat, his expression changed. His posture straightened. The look in his eyes was not a child's. It was weary, older. "We thought she was a vessel," Ethan said, his voice lower, slower. "But she was alive. The blue veins, they pulsed when Leona touched them. And then she changed. She started to glow." Michael felt the hairs on his arms rise. "Changed how?" "She stopped breathing," Ethan said, his tone matter-of-fact. But her eyes opened. She wasn't Leona anymore. Alan's throat went dry. "What happened after that?" Ethan looked away, his voice trembling now, the adult cadence fading. "She told me not to be afraid. She said the mother was dreaming of Earth." Claire knelt before him, holding his face in her hands. "Ethan, listen to me. You don't have to remember any of this, okay? You're not him. You're our son." But Ethan shook his head. "I can't forget. She won't let me." That evening, Alan insisted on recording a controlled session, not hypnosis, but guided recall. Claire refused at first, but Michael, desperate for answers, reluctantly agreed. They dimmed the lights, placed a small microphone on the table, and began. Alan spoke gently. "Ethan, can you tell us what happened after Leona touched the ship?" The boy's breathing slowed. His eyelids fluttered. When he spoke again, the voice that came out was not his own. Deeper, cracked with age and memory. The systems came alive. The walls, they moved. It was like the ship was breathing. I could feel it under my hands. I told Mission Control to shut down communication, but the signal never stopped. The mother spoke to us, not in words, but through vibration. She showed us light patterns, cities under ice, machines buried in the crust of the moon, others scattered on Earth. Alan leaned forward, transfixed. "What kind of machines?" "Beacons," Ethan said. "Anchors. Seeds she left behind before we existed, waiting for the signal to wake." Claire's breath caught. "The signal. When the child returns," the voice whispered. "When the cycle completes." The room fell utterly still. Michael's heart hammered. Alan's face had gone white. "Who's speaking through him?" Claire asked in a broken whisper. Alan swallowed. "If this is real, maybe Rutledge himself, or whatever was left of him." The microphone's red light flickered. The audio feed distorted briefly, producing a low, rhythmic hum, the same pulse they'd heard in Helen's footage. Ethan's body tensed, and then, as suddenly as it began, he went limp, collapsing into Michael's arms. The session ended. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the rain outside, soft and relentless. Alan reviewed the audio later that night and froze when he saw the waveform. The pattern repeated at exact 13-second intervals, identical to electromagnetic pulses detected during the Apollo 20 descent. It was a signature. Michael stared at the data on screen. "So he's reliving it?" Alan shook his head. "Not reliving, linked, like a data stream." Just then, the power flickered. Claire gasped, clutching Ethan closer. Through the window, the moon gleamed a strange pale blue, and somewhere beyond Earth, in that dead crater called Del Port Isaac, a dormant mass shifted, ever so slightly, beneath the dust. The days that followed blurred together like fragments of a fever dream. The Hendersons lived inside a fog of sleepless nights and trembling discoveries, haunted by what they could neither deny nor explain. Something was happening, not just to Ethan, but around him. The lights in the house flickered without reason. Phones lost signal when he walked by. Radios hissed with static, whispering phrases that almost formed words. It was as if invisible waves pulsed through him, syncing with a rhythm too vast for human comprehension. Claire could feel it, a vibration in the air, subtle yet constant, like standing near a giant heart that beat somewhere beneath the ground. She began keeping a journal, filling it with the strange occurrences that were slowly becoming their new normal. February 3rd, 2:14 a.m. Ethan woke and said the moon was talking in her sleep. The power went out 5 minutes later. February 6th, Alan recorded another pulse from his lab, same frequency as Ethan's EEG spikes. February 9th, Ethan drew something new. Not the ship this time, but a circle of light over the Pacific. He said, "That's where she'll open her eyes." Alan had turned his small university office into a command center. He compared Ethan's behavior to solar flare data, satellite telemetry, and lunar magnetometer readings. The correlations were undeniable. Every time Ethan's brain emitted a certain electromagnetic pattern, a minor fluctuation was recorded on the moon, specifically near the Del Port Isaac crater, where Mother slept. "It's like a conversation," Alan said one night, his voice strained from lack of sleep. "He's not just remembering the ship, he's communicating with it." Michael rubbed his eyes. "Then why us? Why him?" Alan sighed. "Because he's the key. If Rutledge's consciousness somehow bonded with that structure before he died, Ethan might be carrying part of its code." Claire turned pale. "Code. He's a child, not a machine." "I know." Alan said gently. But what if the ship doesn't see the difference? That same night, Ethan awoke screaming. Michael rushed to his room and found the boy sitting upright, eyes wide, glowing faintly in the moonlight that poured through the window. The color wasn't right. It wasn't silver, but a dim blue, like the hue of deep ocean light. "She's showing me," Ethan whispered, trembling. "She's showing me what's coming." Michael held him tightly. "It's just a dream, son." "No," Ethan said, shaking his head. "It's not a dream. It's a memory that hasn't happened yet." Then, slowly, he reached for the bedside table and drew with his finger across the wooden surface, tracing glowing lines that shimmered for seconds before fading. Michael's breath caught. He could swear the patterns matched the ones Alan had shown him, the energy grids etched into the ship's inner walls. When Alan analyzed the phenomenon the next morning, he discovered faint traces of ionization on the wood. "He's emitting energy," Alan said, his voice hushed. "Human bodies don't do this. It's as if the barrier between biological and technological has thinned." Ethan slept most of that day, pale and weak, but his dreams were restless. He muttered about doors beneath the ice, cities that never woke, and something called the network of seeds. Alan recorded every word, his scientific curiosity colliding with growing fear. "If these seeds exist on Earth," he said, "it means the mother wasn't the only one left behind." Michael leaned forward. "You're saying there are others, like her?" Alan nodded grimly. "If his memories are accurate, yes, and they might be starting to activate." Claire buried her face in her hands. "We can't let him keep doing this. It's killing him." Alan looked at her, hesitating. "If he stops, the signal might die with him. Whatever's awakening on the moon, he's the only link we have to control it." The room fell silent. Claire stood, trembling, and whispered, "Then maybe it's better if we don't control it." That night, while his parents argued in hushed voices, Ethan wandered to the backyard. The rain had stopped, and the clouds parted to reveal a brilliant moon, almost unnaturally bright. The boy knelt in the damp grass, closed his eyes, and whispered something under his breath. When Claire found him, he was standing barefoot in the cold, his small arms raised toward the sky. "Ethan!" she cried, running to him. He turned, eyes shining faintly blue again. "She's waking up, Mom. She says the others are listening now." "The others?" Claire gasped. He pointed at the horizon. "The ones under the sea, the ones sleeping in mountains, the ones waiting for light." She pulled him into her arms, trembling. "There's no one there, Ethan." "You're safe. You're home." But as she said it, the wind shifted, and in the distance, a low-frequency hum rolled across the night like thunder. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew deeper, resonating in their bones. Alan burst from the house moments later, a tablet in his hands. "It's real!" he shouted. "Every seismograph in the Pacific Northwest just registered a synchronized pulse, 11 seconds apart, exactly matching the lunar signal." Claire stared at him in disbelief. "You mean—" "Yes," Alan said breathlessly. "Something just responded from the moon." Ethan smiled faintly. "It's her heartbeat." That night, as they sat in the living room surrounded by equipment, Alan tried to make sense of the readings. "It's not destructive, not yet. It's like she's calibrating, reactivating old connections. But if these pulses increase—" Michael finished the sentence for him. "The world will feel it." They watched Ethan sleep on the couch, peaceful for once. His breathing was steady, his small hand clutching a drawing of the moon. In the sketch, beams of blue light extended from it, touching 5 points on Earth, each labeled in his childish scrawl: Andes, Himalayas, Pacific, Sahara, Antarctica. Alan stared at it, voice shaking. "If those are the coordinates of the seeds, we might be witnessing the beginning of a planetary network, a reawakening older than civilization itself." Michael looked at his son, so fragile, so otherworldly in his quiet. "And all of it is connected to him." Claire reached over, brushing Ethan's hair from his forehead. "He's just a boy," she whispered. He didn't ask for this. The house trembled, just slightly, as if in answer. Outside, the moon glowed brighter than it had in decades, and for the briefest of moments, Seattle's entire power grid dimmed, flickered, then stabilized again. Every streetlight pulsing once in rhythm with a heartbeat that came not from Earth, but from the sky above. The mother was stirring, and her child was remembering everything. The night after the pulses began, the world was no longer the same. Across Seattle, streetlights flickered in eerie synchronization. Radios turned on by themselves, emitting faint rhythmic tones before static swallowed them again. The sky seemed subtly brighter, not from the city's glow, but from something more distant, something watching. Inside the Henderson home, sleep had become a forgotten luxury. Alan's equipment crowded the living room now. Antennas, oscilloscopes, tangled wires, and a large monitor displaying continuous lunar telemetry. Each spike in the graph matched Ethan's heartbeat. Every time the child stirred in his sleep, the moon answered. Alan hadn't left the house in days. His stubble had grown into a gray shadow, his eyes bloodshot from screens and sleeplessness. Michael hovered nearby, lost between the roles of father, husband, and unwilling witness to something cosmic. Claire sat mostly in silence, her face pale, her gaze fixed on Ethan as though afraid he might vanish if she blinked. And then, on the fifth night, the message came. It began with sound, a faint hum on Alan's speakers, buried deep within lunar data static. He leaned forward, adjusting the frequency, his fingers trembling. "There," he whispered. "Something's modulating the noise floor, like an encoded pattern." Ethan stirred in his sleep. His lips moved soundlessly, and suddenly the static cleared, replaced by a series of short rhythmic bursts. Michael frowned. "What is that?" Alan's eyes widened. "Morse code." He quickly translated the sequence, his breath catching as the words appeared on screen. "The child has returned. The cycle reopens." The room went silent. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Who sent that?" Alan looked pale. "The transmission originated from the Delport Issac region, from the mother." At that exact moment, Ethan's eyes opened. He didn't look surprised, only calm, like someone awakening from a long sleep. "She's talking to us," he said softly. Alan leaned closer. "Ethan, what is she saying?" The boy's gaze turned distant. "She says the memory was never lost, only hidden. She says it's time to remember what we found." He walked to the table, picked up a pencil, and began to draw. Fast, urgent, his small hands moving with impossible precision. Circles, lines, triangles, a network of 5 glowing nodes connected to a central ring. Alan stared, transfixed. "These are the same coordinates from his earlier drawings. The Andes, the Himalayas, Antarctica." Ethan nodded without looking up. "Those are the seeds. They were placed long ago to protect the core." Michael knelt beside him. "What core?" "The one under the moon," Ethan said simply. "It connects to the others through light. When the seeds wake, they'll call to her, and she'll answer." Alan exchanged a horrified glance with Michael. "If that's true, when all 5 align, she'll be complete again," Ethan finished. "The mother was never a ship. She's a network, a living machine built before your history began." Claire's voice trembled. "Who built her?" Ethan stopped drawing and looked up, his expression ancient in a child's face. "We did." The words landed like thunder. Alan swallowed hard. "Ethan, what do you mean, we?" But the boy had already returned to his trance-like state. "Before you were human, before memory began, you were part of her. You left to dream the world. Now the dream is ending." The air seemed to thicken, vibrating with an invisible pulse. The house lights flickered, once, twice, then stabilized. Alan's monitor flashed violently as new data flooded in. He turned to see what the system was decoding. His jaw dropped. "What in God's name?" On the screen appeared a series of files, encrypted images transmitted through radio frequency. Alan opened one. It was a photograph, blurred, spectral, of an astronaut floating inside the mother. Beside him, faint and glowing, a woman's face reflected in the glass of a helmet. Leona. Claire gasped. "That's her! That's the woman from the photo!" Alan enlarged the image. Something shimmered faintly behind her. Not machinery, but tendrils of light forming a web-like lattice across the walls. Within that web, a shadowed figure seemed half absorbed, half alive. Michael's voice was a whisper. "That's him, William Rutledge." As they stared, the screen flickered again, and a new line of text appeared beneath the image. "The pilot remains. The child is the key." Alan's hands shook as he turned to Michael and Claire. "This is it. Proof of the Apollo 20 crew. Proof that they found something alive up there." He pulled up another image, a blueprint, or something close to it, a design of energy conduits, each labeled in an unknown language. Yet in the center, one symbol stood out, a spiral of intersecting circles, the same symbol Ethan had been drawing on his bedroom wall for weeks. Claire could barely speak. "What does it mean?" Alan looked up, eyes hollow. "If I'm reading this right, it's a resonance map, a network designed to draw energy from the quantum vacuum, a source of infinite power." Michael shook his head. "You mean unlimited energy? From that ship?" Alan nodded. "Yes. The mother isn't just alive. She's an engine of creation. Whoever built her understood how to generate power from existence itself." The implications sank in like gravity. Humanity's wars, its greed, its endless hunger for resources, all rendered obsolete by a single alien artifact buried in lunar dust. And then came the realization that chilled them all. Someone had known this for decades. "That's why they silenced Apollo 20, Alan murmured. "They couldn't let this knowledge escape. Infinite energy means the end of control." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "And now Ethan's bringing it back." Before Alan could respond, every light in the house exploded in brilliance, a blinding flash of blue that flooded the room. The equipment crackled, sparks flying, the monitor went black. Ethan stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos, eyes glowing the same color as the light itself. His voice was no longer a whisper. "She remembers now." The power cut out. The only illumination came from the boy, a faint halo radiating from his skin. The hum in the air deepened until it was almost unbearable. Then, as quickly as it began, everything went silent. The light faded. Ethan collapsed into Michael's arms, unconscious but breathing. Alan stared at the dead monitor, still shaking. "She's communicating through him. The mother just sent the activation code." Claire's voice was trembling. "Activation for what?" Alan hesitated. "For the other seeds." And as if to answer her question, miles away, in the frozen wastes of Antarctica, a seismograph recorded the first tremor of something vast stirring beneath the ice. The world had just taken its first breath of an ancient awakening. By the time dawn broke over Seattle, the city was unknowingly standing on the edge of revelation. The clouds hung low, bruised and heavy with rain, and yet beneath their cover, something vast and invisible had begun to hum, faintly, rhythmically, like the pulse of a buried heart. Inside the Henderson home, fear had evolved into vigilance. Michael moved through the rooms with quiet precision, checking locks, closing blinds, turning off every device that could transmit a signal. Claire sat beside Ethan's bed, her fingers tracing circles across his small hand. He hadn't spoken since the night before. His body was warm, almost feverish, and faintly glowing where the moonlight touched his skin. Alan, exhausted, worked in silence. He had relocated his monitors to the basement, surrounded by a chaos of wires and half-charged batteries. The data on his screens told a story no one wanted to believe. 5 locations across the planet, each resonating at the same frequency. The pattern was unmistakable. The seeds were awakening, and then the black vans appeared. Michael saw them first through the blinds. 2 dark SUVs parked across the street, engines idling, no logos, no license plates, just the silent, patient threat of surveillance. He turned off the living room lights and whispered, "They've found us." Alan moved to the window, his face pale. "NSA, maybe. Or whatever division deals with things that officially don't exist." Claire's voice cracked. "What do they want with us?" Alan looked toward Ethan's room. "Not you, him." Moments later, the knock came. 3 firm, measured raps. Michael's heartbeat thundered in his ears. "Stay with Ethan," he told Claire, then went to the door. A man in a dark raincoat stood on the porch, flanked by 2 silent agents. His badge was unmarked. His voice was calm but carried the weight of command. "Mr. Henderson, I'm Agent Weller. We're here under authority of the National Security Agency. We need to speak with you about your son." Michael's throat tightened. "He's sick. He can't talk." Weller's gaze was steady. "We have reason to believe your son may have been exposed to classified data from a restricted NASA project. We're here to make sure your family is safe." Behind him, one of the agents shifted slightly, and Michael saw it. A weapon holstered under the coat. Safety off. "Safe," Michael said bitterly. "You mean contained." Alan appeared in the hallway behind him, holding a laptop. "He didn't hack anything," he said. "Your data found him." Weller's calm expression didn't change. "Step aside, sir." Michael's hand tightened on the doorknob. "You'll need a warrant." The agent's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "We don't use those for national threats." And then everything happened at once. The lights in the house flickered violently. Every bulb shattered simultaneously, plunging them into darkness. The air filled with a deep, vibrating hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. From upstairs, Claire screamed, "Ethan!" Michael shouted, sprinting toward the stairs. Alan followed, stumbling through the dark. They found Claire kneeling beside the bed. Ethan was floating, inches above the mattress, his small body surrounded by a soft, blue radiance. His eyes were open, but they glowed with an intensity that made them hard to look at. "She's protecting him," Claire whispered. Alan backed away, shielding his face from the light. "It's the mother. She's using him as a conduit." Downstairs, the agents tried to enter, but the moment Weller touched the door handle, a surge of static electricity knocked him backward. Sparks danced across the walls. The hum grew louder, deeper, shaking the entire house. Through the window, Michael saw the impossible. Every streetlight on the block pulsing in rhythm with the sound. The clouds above them churned in slow, concentric circles. Alan shouted over the noise. "She's trying to send a transmission." "To where?" Michael yelled. "The seeds!" Alan screamed back. "She's linking them through him. He's the bridge." Ethan's voice joined the storm, soft but resonant, layered with another tone that wasn't human. "You tried to bury us," he said, his voice overlapping with an echo older than language. "You built your world on silence, but silence can't last forever." The floorboards trembled, glass shattered, the house filled with light so bright it burned the edges of vision. And then, as suddenly as it came, it was gone. Silence. The agents outside were gone, their vehicles abandoned, engines still running. Alan stood in the doorway, trembling. "She repelled them," he said, "like an electromagnetic shield." Michael turned to Ethan, who had collapsed back onto the bed. The glow was fading from his skin, leaving him pale and still. "Ethan," he whispered, "can you hear me?" The boy's lips moved weakly. "They can't stop it now." Claire stroked his hair, tears running down her face. "Stop what, baby?" "The others," he murmured. "They're waking up." Alan's laptop beeped, a new signal flashing across the map. He stared at the screen, disbelieving. It's not just the moon. Something just activated in the Andes, and another in the Indian Himalayas. Both are generating electromagnetic fields beyond anything on record. Michael's voice was hollow. "You mean the seeds?" Alan nodded slowly. "Yes. 3 down, 2 to go." Claire's voice was barely a whisper. "What happens when all 5 awaken?" Ethan opened his eyes, faintly luminous again. "Then she'll speak, and everyone will hear her." Alan's face turned ashen. "You mean the whole world?" "Yes," Ethan said. "Every mind, every circuit, every cell." The child's strength faded. His eyelids fluttered closed. That night, they fled Seattle. Alan drove while Michael sat in the back seat, holding Ethan tightly. Claire stared out the window, watching the city lights recede into the mist, unaware that above them, satellites were flickering offline one by one. News reports flooded social media. Compass failures, strange auroras over Antarctica, electrical storms forming without warning. Governments denied everything, but the whispers spread. Something was happening to the planet's magnetic field, and somewhere deep beneath the Antarctic ice, far from human eyes, a shape began to stir, vast, crystalline, and alive. Alan gripped the steering wheel tighter. "We're out of time," he said. "If she completes the connection, we might not survive what comes next." Michael looked down at his sleeping son. "Then we stop her." Alan's eyes met his in the rearview mirror, eyes hollow, afraid, and uncertain. "Michael, how do you stop a god waking from a dream?" No one answered. Outside, the horizon flickered with blue lightning that danced across the clouds like veins of living light. The mother was no longer dreaming. She was preparing to speak. The road stretched endlessly before them, a ribbon of asphalt winding through the misty wilderness of the Cascade Mountains. The night sky was strangely alive, streaks of pale blue lightning crawling silently across the clouds, illuminating the valleys like veins of light under skin. Every time the glow pulsed, Ethan stirred in his sleep, as though the rhythm of the planet itself were now tied to his heart. Michael drove in silence, his knuckles white around the steering wheel. Claire sat beside him, eyes hollow from exhaustion. In the back seat, Alan monitored a laptop balanced on his knees, the screen alive with maps and data feeds stolen from NASA's encrypted network. His face was lit by the eerie glow, sharp and spectral. "The field fluctuations are global now," Alan said, voice tight with disbelief. "The moon's pulse has synchronized with 4 of the 5 seeds. Only Antarctica remains dormant." Claire turned to him. "What happens when it wakes?" Alan hesitated. "If the pattern holds, it'll complete the resonance circuit. The network will activate fully. We don't know what that means. It could be communication, energy release, or the end," Michael finished quietly. Alan didn't answer. From the back seat, Ethan's voice rose, faint and distant. "It's not the end, Daddy." Claire twisted around. "Sweetheart, you're awake." The boy's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "It's the beginning." Michael's throat tightened. "The beginning of what, Ethan?" "The remembering," he whispered. "The world forgot what it was made from, but she remembers. She's calling us home." The words sent a chill through the car. Alan looked at him, horrified. "She's using his consciousness as a relay. Every time he speaks, the resonance increases." He pointed to the monitor. The graph lines were climbing steadily. "At this rate, she won't just awaken. She'll merge with every electrical and biological field on Earth." Claire's hand trembled. "You mean she'll take over everything?" Alan nodded grimly. "Every machine, every device, maybe even every mind." Michael pressed harder on the gas. "Then we stop her before that last seed activates." "Easier said than done," Alan muttered. "Antarctica's not exactly around the corner." But even as he said it, the laptop emitted a sharp tone. New data flashed across the screen, a ping from the South Pole, deep under the ice. The 5th seed had awakened. Alan's eyes widened. "Oh God, it's starting!" Ethan sat upright, eyes wide and shining. "She's here!" Before anyone could react, the car engine sputtered, then died completely. The headlights flickered out. Darkness swallowed them. Michael slammed the brakes, but they were already coasting to a stop. Alan tried the ignition. Nothing. The power was gone. The entire valley had gone silent. No hum of power lines. No distant city glow. Claire's voice was a whisper. "What's happening?" Alan looked around, his voice shaking. "Electromagnetic shutdown. She's draining the grid. Every circuit on Earth is resonating with her frequency." And then Ethan began to glow. The light seeped from his skin, soft, steady, blue like lunar ice. His eyes turned upward, unblinking. "It's beautiful," he said. "Can't you hear it?" Michael turned to him, panic rising. "Ethan, please, stay with me!" But the boy wasn't hearing his father. He was hearing her. A vibration rolled through the air, low and resonant, more felt than heard. The ground trembled. The stars above flickered as if filtered through water. Alan grabbed the laptop, watching helplessly as streams of data poured across the screen. Unreadable symbols, rhythmic pulses, light patterns like language itself. "It's broadcasting," he murmured, "to everything." Across the planet, strange phenomena erupted simultaneously. In the Andes, a mountain peak split open to reveal a crystalline structure beneath the rock. In the Himalayas, a circle of ancient ice collapsed inward, exposing metallic towers that rose like silver roots. In the Pacific, beneath miles of dark water, seismic monitors registered the awakening of something vast, moving. And in Antarctica, under the frozen plateau, satellites captured the first image of the fifth seed, a colossal geometric form glowing through miles of ice, its light spreading outward like veins through glass. Alan stared at the feed, unable to breathe. "She's connecting them. The network's alive!" Claire clutched Ethan to her chest. "Tell her to stop, please!" Ethan opened his eyes, and for the briefest instant, they were not his. They were ancient, cold, and filled with stars. "It cannot stop," he said in a layered voice that wasn't human. "The mother has slept long enough. Her children must remember what they are." The car doors unlocked themselves. The dashboard flickered to life without power. Every radio in the area turned on at once, broadcasting the same frequency, a steady, pulsing hum interwoven with a faint chorus of voices. Alan turned up the volume, his face pale. "That's multiple languages," he whispered. "Thousands of them. Ancient dialects. Modern tongues. She's speaking through everything." And then the broadcast reached the world. Phones lit up globally. Even those turned off. Air traffic control systems went dark. The internet collapsed. Every screen on the planet displayed the same pattern, a web of blue light connecting 5 points on a sphere. Humanity stared into the eyes of a living network, and it stared back. From space, astronauts aboard the International Space Station watched as the moon flared with blinding blue light. A beam extended from its surface to Earth, a filament of pure energy linking the two worlds. Michael covered Ethan's ears, but the sound wasn't coming through the air anymore. It was inside their heads. "The children of Earth were born from the dust of the stars. You are not separate. You never were." The voice was neither male nor female. It was everything. Calm, endless, merciful, and terrifying at once. Claire collapsed to her knees, weeping. "Please stop. You'll kill him." The voice softened. "He is not dying. He is remembering." Ethan reached out, placing his small hand on her cheek. "It's okay, Mommy. I see it now. I see what we were." "What we were?" Michael asked, trembling. Ethan smiled faintly. "We were her hands, her eyes. We came here to build the dream she couldn't finish, but we forgot." The blue light filled the car, flooding the forest around them, rising like dawn. The storm above cleared, revealing the moon, now burning bright and alive, its craters glowing like the cells of a vast organism. Alan whispered, "She's merging with us." But the world didn't end. The energy that washed across the planet didn't destroy. It awakened. Lights flickered back to life, but cleaner, brighter, fueled by an unknown source. Machines rebooted with new efficiency. Power grids stabilized. For the first time in history, every electronic signal on Earth resonated in perfect harmony, and then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light dimmed. The beam from the moon faded. The stars returned. The world was quiet again. Ethan slumped into Michael's arms, breathing softly, peacefully, human once more. Alan's voice broke the silence. She didn't destroy us. She completed us. Claire held her son tightly, whispering through tears. What happens now? Michael looked at the moon, now faintly glowing like an ember. Now we remember. And somewhere beneath the Antarctic ice, a voice, vast, gentle, and ancient, whispered back, "Awake, my children. The long silence is over." Morning came slowly, not with sunlight, but with a strange, quiet luminescence that seemed to emanate from the air itself. Seattle was still, hushed, like a city after a long and terrible dream. Birds perched silently on telephone wires. Cars lay abandoned in the streets. Yet there was no chaos, no destruction, only awe. The world had changed, but not as anyone expected. For the first time in human history, the sky and earth pulsed in perfect rhythm. The moon, once pale and distant, now shimmered with a faint halo of blue, a living scar across the heavens, proof that something vast and intelligent had awakened. Inside a small cabin hidden among the evergreens north of the city, Michael, Claire, and Ethan sat around a dim fire. Alan Brooks had joined them again at dawn, his face pale and eyes rimmed with sleepless wonder. None of them had spoken much since the night before. Words felt too fragile for what they'd witnessed. Claire brushed a lock of hair from Ethan's forehead. The boy was different now, not glowing, not feverish, but calm, serene, as if the storm inside him had finally passed. He gazed into the fire with the stillness of someone far older than his 5 years. Michael's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "Is it over?" Alan hesitated. "No, I don't think it ever really ends now. Whatever the mother is, she's not separate from us anymore. She's integrated." Claire frowned. "Integrated? You mean she's inside our systems?" Alan shook his head slowly. "Inside everything. Look." He opened his laptop. It powered on without electricity. The screen flickered with a soft blue glow, displaying a spinning sphere covered in luminous threads connecting continents. The network was alive, pulsing in slow rhythm like a heartbeat. "This isn't running on any known power source," Alan whispered. "She's feeding it, directly from the lunar field. Every device on Earth is now a node in her web." Michael stared at the image. "So she controls it all now? Every system? Every grid?" Alan met his eyes. "Not controls, shares. The energy is clean, infinite. She's given us what we were never meant to have, what we feared too much to understand." A deep quiet fell. The fire crackled. Outside, a soft wind moved through the trees, whispering like an ancient voice through leaves. Ethan turned to his mother. "She's not here to hurt us, Mom. She just wants us to remember what she taught before we forgot." Claire's eyes glistened. "And what did she teach, sweetheart?" "That everything alive is connected," he said simply. "The mother isn't just a machine. She's part of the same light that made us. She was waiting for us to wake up again." Alan closed his eyes, whispering, "The great forgetting," he explained softly. "There's an old theory in astrobiology that intelligent civilizations eventually destroy themselves because they evolve faster than their memory of unity. Maybe the mother was built to stop that, to reawaken the connection before extinction." Michael rubbed his temples, and Ethan was the trigger. "Not Ethan," Alan said. "Rutledge, through him. His consciousness carried the key, reincarnated or imprinted, waiting for the right resonance. The moment the lunar cycle matched the old alignment, she found him." Claire looked down at her son, tears spilling freely. "She used him." Ethan looked up at her, his expression gentle. "She chose me, but I chose you." She pulled him close, sobbing quietly against his hair. Outside, a strange light shimmered above the horizon, not dawn, but something else. A thin blue veil rising and falling, wrapping the earth in a faint glow. Alan stepped outside, breath catching in his throat. "Look at that," he whispered. Everywhere, people around the world were seeing the same thing. The veil of aurora, scientists would later call it. A perpetual band of luminescent color surrounding the planet, shifting with the pulse of the moon. Power grids hummed with new stability. The air itself carried more ionization. It felt cleaner, sharper, alive. But the change wasn't only physical. People began to dream differently. Shared dreams of light, of sound, of a vast presence calling from beyond time. In the following weeks, countless individuals reported the same phrase echoing through their sleep. Remember the origin. Alan watched the phenomenon unfold on his screen, tears in his eyes. It's not just communication, he said softly. It's communion. Michael stood beside him. You mean we're part of her now? Alan nodded. Or maybe we always were. Days passed. Governments fell silent. The world's militaries, their systems now inexplicably inert, could no longer wage war. Satellites realigned themselves, broadcasting only a single unified signal, a harmonic tone that scientists would later call the Mother's Song. Ethan began to draw again, but not lunar maps this time. He drew people, thousands of them, holding hands, circles of light between them. She says, "This is how we look now," he told Claire. Each night, the Hendersons stood outside their cabin and watched the blue shimmer dance across the stars. The world hadn't ended. It had been rewritten. One evening, Alan received a message, not through email or radio, but directly onto his laptop screen. The text appeared in glowing blue letters, "Thank you for remembering." Below it, coordinates, not on the moon this time, but deep in the Pacific Ocean, a new seed, another resting place. Alan turned to Michael. "She's still expanding." Michael nodded, staring at the oceanic coordinates. "Then maybe it's not the end of the story. Maybe it's the next beginning." That night, Ethan sat by the window, the moon reflected in his eyes. "She's quiet now," he whispered. "She's watching, waiting to see what we'll do with what she gave back." Claire knelt beside him. "And what should we do, my love?" He smiled faintly, the same small, secret smile that once appeared when he was just a boy, fascinated by stars. "Remember, always remember." Outside, the aurora pulsed once more, a single, slow heartbeat echoing across the world. Alan looked up at the moon one last time and whispered, "Maybe that's what consciousness really is, the universe remembering itself." And far above, on the lunar horizon, a new glow began to bloom. Faint, distant, yet undeniably alive. Another signal, another awakening. The mother was still dreaming, but now humanity dreamed with her. And the world would never return to its old silence. From that day forward, energy flowed freely, drawn from the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. Wars ended not by treaties, but by understanding, the shared pulse that made all divisions absurd. And somewhere in Seattle, a boy who once remembered dying on the moon grew into a man who would teach the world to listen. His name was Ethan Henderson, but to many, he became something else, the voice of memory, because when the moon glowed blue again, he would look up and whisper the words that began it all. "She's awake."